Hi, I'm Eva Murphy from Electronic Engineering at IT Sligo, and this is my BEng Cert Maths Grinds channel. I'll regularly add new videos for both higher and ordinary level maths, so make sure you subscribe below and click the bell icon to be notified of new videos. Right, let's have a look at the functions question on 2016 BEng Cert ordinary level. It was question 9. And it was as follows. Company A uses the following formula to charge a customer for a job, A of H equals, where A of H, I'm just going to underline what they mean, A of H is the cost of the job in euro and H is the length of time that the job takes in hours. Company B uses the following formula to charge a customer for the same job, and there it is. B of H is the cost of the job and H is again the length of time. Okay, so you can see I just underline basically what the letters mean so that if the questions start talking about costs of jobs, I know then that it's either A of H or B of H depending on the company. And if they start talking about lengths of time the job takes, I now know that they're talking about the H values. Okay, so underline just enough to kind of guide you to what the letters mean, but not underline too much or you'll get confused in your own highlighting. So part A asks you to complete the table below to show what company A charges and what company B charges for the job that takes up to 5 hours. Where necessary, give the charge correct to the nearest cent. Okay, so there's a couple of ways of doing this. I'm going to do what I'm going to call the long way first. Okay, so A of H. And we know it's equal to 30 plus 9.5 H, okay? So when H is 0, A of H, so I could call it A of 0, is equal to 30 plus 9.5 times 0, so it's equal to 30, okay? And I'm putting my 30 in there. So even though a job doesn't take any length of time, it costs 30. So that's what's normally called a call-out charge. And it's the charge before they do any work at all. Okay, so H is equal to 1. So therefore A of 1 is equal to 30 plus 9.5 times 1. So that's going to be 39.50 because it's money. When H is equal to 2, I'm going to get 30 plus 950 times 2. 9 is 18 is 19, so that's going to be 49. H is equal to 3. I'm going to get 30 plus 9.5 times 3. So I'm going to get 58.50 for that one. Okay, I always check the answer they gave me to know that my method is right. And in fact, many times I would start with the answer that they give me to make sure that I'm putting it into the calculator right. Okay, so 38 and 30 is 68. That's perfect. So he's good. H is equal to 5, 30 plus 9.5 times 5. And I'm getting 77.50 for that. Okay, and then for B of H, you do the same thing. It is 10 bracket 1.74 to the power of H. Okay, so when H is 0, I'm going to get 10 times 1.74 to the power of 0. Anything to the power of 0 is 1. So that whole number there is 1. 10 times 1 is 10. Okay, so be careful because you could really easily put down 0 for that one, thinking anything to the power of 0 would be 0. Okay, so then H is equal to 1. 10 times 1.74 to the power of 1. H is equal to 2. 10 times 1.74 squared. And you get 30.276 rounds to 28. because it's money, I have to round to 2 decimal places. So he's 1740. He's 3028. Then to the power of 3 would be 5268. I'm going to check my power of 4 to make sure I'm okay. And I'm getting 91.66. That's good. And check my power of 5. And I'm getting 159.49. Okay, so that's how you would fill out the table. There is a way of doing it on the calculator, so I want to show you how to do that because it is faster. Okay, and what you're typically doing when you're doing it on the calculator is the following. So you're creating a table. There's your H values. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I didn't do my lines long enough. Okay. Your function goes in the middle, which is 30.9.5 H. You tend to show one line, and then this is your outputs, which is A of H in this case, and we would get 30. So you're going into, on your calculator, you're going into mode setup. Now I'm on the Casio FX83 GT calculator, so not this year's one, and you're going to the option 3, which is table. Okay, and you should get a flashing f of x equals. And in there you put this function. Okay, so you're putting into your calculator 30 plus, I'm just doing it now as I type it, 30 plus 9.5. Now, the calculator doesn't have H in it, but it does have a big red X, okay? So do you see the X button is behind the close bracket? So above the 9, hit alpha and that close a bracket and you should get a big X, okay? Now your calculator doesn't know that the question has H, it just uses X for everything, okay? But what it does do for that X is it subs in all of these values in turn. So hit equals then, and that logs it into the memory of the calculator. And the next thing you'll see is start question mark, okay? So this is what value do you want to start at? In our case, it's 0. So put in 0 and hit equals because that equals logs it into the calculator. Hit end, question mark, we're going to end at 5 equals, and we're going up in steps of 1, okay? So our step is we're going up in steps of 1 equals. And then you should get a table that has X and then F of X on it down here. You'll see in the X columns is your 0, your 1, your 2, and if you hit the down arrow on your calculator, you'd see 3, 4, and 5, okay? Now come over to the F of X column and you'll see all your AH values. So there's the 30 that we worked out, 39.5, 49, 58.5, the 68 and the 77. So that's a really fast way of putting functions into the calculator. And to be honest, it's how your examiner expects you to do it, okay? So for my answer, I would have all of these written down here. Now you had a table there, so you didn't have to do this one. But this is how I would do normal sets questions, and I don't bother putting anything here. I give them one example of how I would do it manually, which is what we're doing here, okay? And then the calculator does the rest. Okay, so slightly different on the ClassWiz calculator. Again, it is it's menu set up here, okay? It still is option 3. But they have graphics on the ClassWiz, this year's calculator. But you'll see that when you go over to that third graphic, you'll see 3 table like that. Okay, so you hit equals when you get that one, and then you get the flashing f of x. It's still the same. It's still 30.95 x that you're putting in. It's still the same. Let me just put it in just to double check the next bit is the same. I think it is, but let me just check. equals, yeah, except your end and your step ends up on the one screen as opposed to 3 different screens that it was on the older calculator. So you just hit equals, equals, equals after all of them and you get the same table. Okay, so that's how you work out part A. Part 2 then says on the grid below, draw separate graphs to show the charge for company A and the charge for company B. Label each graph clearly. Okay, so what are we doing? Let's pick a color for, and I'm going to actually use my calculator to put in the values here because they are just in that table. So let's do A of H first because it's on our calculator. So my first value is 0.30. Which is here. My next value is 1 and it's 39.50, which is just under the 40, which is here. I then have 2 and 49, which is just under the 50. And then I have 58.5 and 4 is 68. Oh, wrong place. And 5 is 77.5. Okay, and you do your best to join them together. Now, sorry, it's not bad, but it's ever so slightly off because I'm doing it on a screen. And really importantly, you label your graph. Okay, so that is A of H. It is a line. I would expect it to be a line because when I look at this function, it is what's called a linear function. Okay, it's just H to the power of 1. And when that happens, when the value you're subbing in for is to the power of 1, you'll always get a line. This one where the H is in the power will be what's called an exponential curve. So I would expect it to start off slow and then shoot up. Okay, so do you know what? I'm just going to put that into my calculator. So 10 bracket 1.74 bracket to the power of red x equals start at 0, end at 5, go up in steps of 1. Okay, so I'm going to pick a different color, and I would pick different colors in my exam because it's easier to see what you're doing. So at 0, I'm starting at 10. At 1, I go up to 17.4. At 2, I'm going up to 30, just above 30. At 3, 3, I'm going up to 52.68. 52.68, so somewhere there. Okay. At 4, I'm going up to 91.68 and then almost to 160. Okay, be careful when you're looking at your calculator that you don't look at that first row of numbers or column of numbers because it's just literally line 1, line 2, line 3. It can be a bit confusing there when you're trying to read them. Okay, so this is, as I thought, starting off slow and then shooting up. So this is my B of H graph. Okay, and there tends to be a fair old amount of marks for drawing a graph. Could be as much as 10 for doing that table and 10 for doing the graph. Now, I don't have the marking scheme in front of me, so I don't know it for sure, but in general, that's what they tend to cost, that's what they tend to give for marks for them. Okay, so it's a really nice 20 marks once you know how to sub in the values or use your calculator, whichever you prefer. You can do it either or, and then once you graph it. Okay, so they tend to then follow it up with a couple of questions about the graph. Okay, so one of the changes that came in with Project Maths was how to read graphs. So pre-project maths, the importance may have been on drawing the graphs. Project maths, it's about can you read the graphs? What does this data mean for you? So part B, which company would charge the least for a job that takes 2.5 hours to complete? Okay, so what it's trying to do here is you have a job that you estimate is going to take 2.5 hours, and you're trying to find out who's the best company to hire. Is it company A or company B? Okay, so the way you do it is you come to your graph. Now I have a ruler here in front of me on my screen, okay? And what I do is you show on the graph, if it'll mark for me. Okay, so that's my 2.5 hours. Okay, so why did I stop there? Well, I've hit the two graphs, okay? So what I do then is I come across to the y-axis for the two of them, and you come across at the point where it touches the graph, okay? So I came up at 2.5 hours. So what I do is I look at hours and I go, right, that's my x-axis. So you come into your function from the time or the hours axis when they give you a certain number of hours. And you keep coming until you touch your function. Okay, so I touched the lower one there and I kept going until I also did the top one. And then where it touched the purple one, I came across to my y-axis so I can read off the charge for that. And then I came up to the red one and I come across to my y-axis and I can read off the charge for that. Okay, so how would I answer it then? Well, I would say A of H is charging, A of H is my red one. I'm going to say about 53 euros there. And then B of H, which is my purple one, seems to be charging about 40 euros. My lines are a little bit crooked. Okay, which company would charge least? B of H would charge the least. Okay. And that's that answered. But this is the important part. A lot of the marks for the functions question, these wordy ones, goes for what I call the construction marks on your graph. That is you showing the examiner that you understand how to read a graph. So you have to have these construction marks there. And you can see I tend to color code them so that it's really easy to see what marks are for what question. So one of those 4 color biros are really handy for this question, or a pencil, as long as the pencil can see it. Because once you can do all of these constructions and once you understand them, the questions themselves are relatively easy and very fast. So the time for functions question obviously goes into the graph. Okay, that eats up time. So you have to have practiced a good few of graphing questions so that you are able to do it pretty fast. C, use your graph to estimate the value of H for which the charge is the same for both companies. And the other thing I'll point out is that an awful lot of the questions will have estimate because we're reading values off a graph, so it's not accurate. Okay, so that's why a lot of the questions will say estimate. So where does it charge the same? Well, it always charges the same where it crosses over. Okay, so let's get a color to play with that, and let us attempt to draw onto the screen again. I use a graph to estimate the value of H, okay? So in fact, I only need to go down on this one. I was just about to go across because isn't H time in hours? So they only asked for the value of H. So what's that, about 3? That's 3.5 hours. So 3.25 hours. So about 3.25 hours. Okay, find the difference in cost for a job that takes 6 hours to complete. Okay, so there's a couple of ways you can do this. It would have been lovely if the graph went out to 6, okay? So you can, you could extend the graph out to 6, okay? And move him up. He's going to shoot up. but that's not awfully accurate, okay, because it comes down to how well you can draw that. And while it works well for a line, because literally you just follow the same line, it's much harder to do it accurately for the exponential because it's harder to get that curve right. So the easiest way to do it is to sub in 6, okay? So in other words, remember how we found out all of these values? Well, we just do a box for 6. Okay, so A of H was equal to 30 plus, I can't remember what it was, 30 plus 9.5 H. So we're going to go 9.56 equals, put that into my calculator. So to take it back off that table mode, you hit mode, setup again, and you press 1, which is, I think, computation. And again, menu setup on ClassWiz, and you press number 1, okay? And that takes it out of that functions mode. So 30 plus 9.5 times 6, and I'm getting 87. And then for B of H, well, I'm going to expect a really high value here, okay, because this graph is exponential and it's just starting to shoot up. So he was 10 bracket 1.74 to the power of 6. So let's put that into our calculator. 1.74 bracket power of 6 equals 277.52. Okay, I never did explain the power button and how to put it in. So it's the X with the box up here colored in. That's how you put in any power at all, okay? And you can see it's kind of up from 9 or just under the circle button in the middle, kind of to the right of 9, okay? So once you hit that button, so if you go 10 bracket 1.74, close your bracket, then hit that button there, you can see that the cursor jumps up so that the next number you put in will be a power. Okay, because the danger is, of course, that you put it in as 10 bracket 1.76, 1.74 and 6 on the same level. Okay, and that's a very easy mistake to make, but it's not, it's in the power. So you need to not write in that 6, you need to hit that button and then put in the 6. Okay, so the question says find the difference. Okay, so I obviously then have to go 277.52 minus that 87, and I am getting €190.52. Okay, quite a difference. Okay, I think that's the end of that question. Okay, but I want to ask one more question on it, or I want to tell you one more question that comes up an awful lot, which is how to analyze that graph. So if I asked you, who is the right company to choose for a job? How would you answer it? Okay, and that's the hardest question they can ask you on reading a graph, because the answer isn't straightforward. Okay, so your answer is up to a job that takes less than 3¼ hours, choose BH, because you see he's less. But if it's a long job, okay, do not choose BH, choose AH. So you need to estimate the length of time for a job. If it's less than 3¼ choose BH. If it's greater, choose AH.
If you are interested in technology or engineering, but are not doing higher level maths, why not consider our Level 7 in Electronic and Computer Engineering? This is a 3-year programme that looks at the design and development of embedded electronic systems. These are the medical devices that keeps us healthy, the consumer devices that keeps us entertained, or the controlled systems that keeps us safe on the road. You can then progress on to the Level 8 in electronics and self-driving technologies, and from there to the Masters.
Check out the link below for more information.